The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star.
Welcome into Girls Talk, Boys Talk, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Love the jacket. For those that are listening and can't see it, that's a swaggy little Letterman varsity jacket. I assume it's from the team store.
I was going to say, I should have brought mine down too. We could have been the silver and white.
I bought it last year for the whiteout for the 49ers game. So I'll just keep for decoration, I guess.
You should sage it.
I like that.
Sage it?
Yeah.
Oh, for good luck or whatever? Okay.
Yeah, why are you bringing that in if it was such bad luck for the
Bad
Cowboys?
juju, it matched. That's all I had.
It's apropos that one of their most heavily penalized games, particularly in the postseason, comes off a week where they were heavily penalized against the Giants. But we talked enough about penalties yesterday, right?
I was like, don't get me started again.
Penalties have been an issue for the Cowboys this year, ladies, but also run defense. It's really, truly been an Achilles heel for them. And the reason why I think opposing teams have had a lot of success running the ball against the Cowboys is because the Cowboys have such a formidable pass rush that when you've got one, I think, that's performing at an elite level, they're number one in the league in terms of pass rush. You have three guys that have 5 sacks or more, 45 sacks a team, which is insane. Something's got to give, right? So it's where do you find the balance, right? It's almost like we're talking about the Cowboys offense last year when the passing game was through the roof. You had each receiver, 1,000 yards receiving, and then we looked at the run game and it was anemic. So I think it goes back to complementary football, complementary defense, right? The Cowboys had one of the worst run defenses heading into that Vikings game. They were 29th in the league, which is incredible. I mean, that was coming off that nasty Packers game, right? But let's talk about where they are now. They've made tiny strides. There's no moral victories, but they're gone from 29th to 24th. I thought what was impressive, and again, we talked about it after the Vikings game. I said, I don't know if that was a good indication of whether they had fixed the run defense because they put up so many points, 40 points to just their 3. It was hard for them to establish the run. But in that one, they had Dalvin Cook, 11 carries, 72 yards. Then let's talk about last week, which I think was a better indicator of this run defense.
Yeah, they shut it down early. Particularly
with Daniel Jones and what he could do with his legs. Saquon Barkley, 39 yards, 11 carries. He did find the end zone once. But that led me to ask the question to Micah Parsons, has the run game been fixed? And his answer to me was, we will see this week. So, ladies, I want to pose the question to you. You guys have been watching the games. You watch the film. Do you think they figured out their run game? Whoever wants to answer this one first, go for it.
I don't think that there's an immediate fix for something like that. I think that's something that you're going to see within time, within these next few weeks especially. What I think is very interesting, though, is Leighton Vander Esch and how he particularly has stepped up to help alleviate the run game and really shut it down early and the tackling. That's something I really wanted to mention in terms of the defense in general. I think what I have noticed these last couple of weeks is instead of tackling forward, they're tackling down and they're not giving that extra yardage, which any yards matter when it comes to this game, as we know. So I don't necessarily think we know yet. I think it's a big question mark still, but I think it's on the right track if they continue to just play the basics of football, tackle well, and stick to their jobs and stick to their tasks like we talked about. So I think it's still to be determined, but I do think with Jonathan Taylor this week, we are definitely going to find out if that run D is fixed or not.
I think it goes back to a few weeks ago when Mike McCarthy was speaking about the pass rush being a privilege, and you're able to pass rush whenever you're able to defend the run well. And so for me, while it's not necessarily an immediate fix, the thing that all of these guys, when you ask them, how do you fix the run defense, they all say the same thing. We all have to do our jobs. We all have to do our assignments. I mean, Malik Hooker told us that on Monday during Cowboys Hour because I asked him point blank, how do you fix that? Everyone talks about fixing the run defense. How do you fix that? And he's just said, and I think we talked about this too, it takes one guy to mess everything up. And so a heavy emphasis from what I've gathered from the guys in the locker room is just that. They've been watching the film. They've been really nailing down on making sure that they're not doing too much, being too big, not being, getting in their other teammates' way, just focusing on what they can do. And I mean, I've got to give them credit. It was tough after that Vikings game because you thought, well, they smacked the Vikings. And so it was really challenging to evaluate anything other than how well the offense performed in that game. So then we said, all right, well, let's see if they do it against the Giants. And then they held Saquon Barkley to, 39 yards on 11 carries. So, I mean, it's tough because, yes, there was a run defense issue for sure. I'm not negating that. But I just kind of feel like they got out of their own way. They've talked about that a lot this week, too, just getting out of their own way. And I think Jonathan Taylor posing that offensive running game threat again, you'll get the opportunity to see, how much they've continued to improve on doing the little things correctly.
Absolutely. And to your point, one of the more important things that I thought that they did well was actually defend Daniel Jones well, because that's something that the Cowboys have had trouble with mobile quarterbacks. I also, too, want to talk about how much patience it takes to earn the pass rush when teams are almost one-dimensional coming into this game because they don't want to pass on you. So I think that's also something I'm trying to keep in mind when we think about the rush defense, is that if a team has no other option or the only way that they see success is through running, it's going to be that's what they're focusing on. So I also think that for the players, a lot of it is just being patient and waiting for that time when that team may just run the ball, because they don't know what else. They don't want to do anything else. But also, you also got a lot of run support this past game from your DBs. They came up and were willing to help contain the edge, close off the edge. I think Deron Bland had a couple plays. The safeties, the cornerbacks. It's a collective effort, and that's something that you hadn't seen in the past couple weeks as well, is that those corners felt like they were attacking the edges. Teams were attacking the edges, and one of the reasons they were doing it was because your corners and your safeties were not coming up and tackling. Them being physical is making a difference in the run game as well.
And I definitely think this week they are going to commit to running the ball, particularly when you look at some of the struggles that this offensive line has had for the Colts. Questions about the arm strength of Matt Ryan. He's not a dual threat quarterback. This is not a guy that's going to use his legs at 37. Even though we heard Dan Quinn saying he's a wolf in sheep's clothing, he's the ultimate competitor. Sure, he's gotten the team to a Super Bowl before. But I just think there was a reason he was benched twice this season, right? And so when we talk about their other weapons, we talked to Lara Overton about this yesterday. They have Michael Pittman Jr. To consider if they want to, go out and do something with their passing game. But I think Jonathan Taylor is really their offensive weapon. But still, she mentioned this yesterday, the Jonathan Taylor that they're dealing with this season is not the Jonathan Taylor that we saw last season. In fact, I think he's only got 2 100-yard games this season compared to
only 2.
Yeah, I think last year he had 7. Let me double check that, so I'm not giving you guys bad information around the water cooler. I would hate that. I'd hate for you to be quoting me and I'm wrong. So he had 10 games in 2021, most in the NFL, of 100 or more rushing yards. And like I said, he's only had 100 rushing yard games in 2 this year. So again, I think he's a threat. You have to be mindful of. It was Micah Parsons who described him as a light Derrick Henry. But you've done a little bit more research on Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
What should Cowboy fans know about the opponent this week?
Well, aside from his acceleration, his ability to really take off, I think one thing to really note about him is that he can run through those arm tackles. So that's why I think tackling is going to be put to the test this week, specifically with Jonathan Taylor, because when he has that power, he's going, and he's going far. So you mentioned he has 2 100-yard games. One of them actually came week 1 against the Texans. He had 161 yards, touching the ball 31 times during that game. He was averaging only about 5.2 yards a carry, which isn't bad when you consider the positive yardage that comes with that. His longest run that week was 17 yards. Now you jump again to week 7, his second 100-yard rushing game, 147 yards, touched the ball 22 times. He averaged 6.7 yards a carry that week. His longest run, it was the longest run of the season so far during that game, was 66 yards, and he took off. That man has some jets. Oh my goodness, I was watching that play. Yeah, contain those edges. That's all I can really say for the Cowboys defense on that one. And then after that, you see a little bit of a dip. His third best game this season. He only had 86 yards, considering he touched the ball 20 times, averaged 4.3 yards a carry. Longest run that week was 13 yards. So, again, you're not seeing the number 5 in the NFL Top 100 Jonathan Taylor that you saw last season, but he is still a threat, especially on those edges. I think, if anything, the Cowboys defense is going to be tested early with seeing how much they can seal up those edges. And, again, the tackling is going to be huge. You have to tackle him down. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Jonathan Taylor will break through those arms, and with all of these games that I went back and watched film on him, that's what you see. You see him just pushing and trucking along. He wears defenses out quickly, and he is a very special player. When he is hot, he is hot.
I want to piggyback off of that really quick because it's so interesting, because yesterday when we were in here, I was talking about how this game gives me like Giants vibe 2.0. To Aisha's point, the Giants at least had the added luxury of having Daniel Jones being mobile as a quarterback. I think the Colts rank 25th in their rushing offense. Yes. And so to me, just to your point, Jess, it kind of bodes to the point, like, you shut down Jonathan Taylor, what else can this team really do? Because you've got to force Matt Ryan to throw. He's the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. Yeah. So it's coming full circle, when we talk about how do we see the run defense find success, you shut down Jonathan Taylor, and then you see that pass rush privilege on full display because now we've got Matt Ryan throwing.
Is it a Kirk Cousins game again
man.
Where he gets sacked 7 times?
I
mean, they literally have, when we talk about tough offenses, let's go down the list. 26th in total offense, 30th in scoring, 25th in rushing, 18th in passing, 28th in third down, last in sacks, tied for last in turnovers, 29th in the red zone, 29th in big plays, 27th in yards play. And by the way, you're going up against a 7th-ranked defense, 2nd in scoring, 1st in passing, 5th in third downs, 1st in sacks, tied for 7th in turnovers. It could be a rough day in office for the 4-7-1 Colts that have Jeff Saturday, which we're going to get into just kind of our thoughts on that in our next block. On paper, the Cowboys should handily have this. What concerns me a little bit, ladies, is we talked about after the bye week, the Cowboys should have beat the Packers, who were coming off 5 straight losses. Now, Matt Ryan is no Aaron Rodgers, but they didn't have a lot of weapons. I think a lot of people, including the team, were shocked at the egg that they laid. And when we hear Mike McCarthy talk yesterday that it wasn't their best practice, that, it's like he gives these guys the time off, which I think they appreciate. But I feel like sometimes they come back from these long breaks. It's like we keep talking about, again, going back to the penalties, the issue has been the focus. We talk about the run defense, the issue is the focus. If you're going to fix those things, and Dak has talked about, you got to do those little things in practice. There's only so much he can do with people when they're away from the facility. They have families, they have wives, etc. But when they're in the building, the focus has to be there. And when you hear the coach say, practice wasn't really what you want, are you at all concerned by that?
Well, I'm glad that he's being transparent about it, because I'm sure that's something that happens within the NFL often, is that, sometimes the practice showing isn't great, but good for him for holding them accountable and talking about it. And sounds like he called them out and they came to a better resolution. I believe that somebody asked about how practice was today, and it seemed like it was better energy and stuff. But as far as what's going on with them and them having the time off, I think it's a hard balance to find, like you were saying, because these guys do need time away from their family. Mike McCarthy's very big on them getting the time to kind of recharge and stuff. But then also you mentioned, like, how do you keep guys locked in during that time? He mentioned some virtual stuff as well, though, in going that route while they are away. But I see what you're saying in regard to them not being focused, and
it's
part
also
of that
week 13, and it's a 4-7-1 Colts team.
Yeah.
It's hard to get up for, I think, an AFC opponent.
Yeah.
It's easy for them to lock in when it's the Vikings. They've got to prove themselves after the Packers game. But you really thought they should have gotten up for the Packers. I mean, it was Mike McCarthy's return home game. It was, like I said,
they beat themselves that game.
Right. It was and you hope that on a Sunday night football, can you imagine what that would do to the locker room?
Oh, he gonna get up.
I'm just.
How many Sunday night games have they played this year? It's the second one, besides the
their
Bucs.
Second one. They had the Bucs the first week.
They get up.
It's just, but it's also you sort of get long in the tooth in the season. It's week 13. It's exhausting. Well, they had the Sunday night game with the Bucks in week 1.
Didn't they have another one though, or am I tripping?
Barnacles, I don't
No,
think so.
I'm thinking Thursday night. I'm thinking Thursday night.
I
Ignore me.
think too is what anything has showed us these last couple of weeks with this Cowboys team is surprise, surprise, they're human. That illness that's going around the locker room, which we learned from Mike McCarthy today, is multiple things. He wouldn't specify on what exactly it was, but you're also seeing the human side within these players if they get sick. And, I know for me personally, when I'm sick, it's hard for me to recover. And I'm not out there putting my body on the line playing football. These men are, and they have to still get up. They still have to come to work. This is their job. And so I think, we're seeing a lot of that spreading throughout the locker room. But also, I think it could be this week off, this mini bye, if you will, is a good reset for that in itself, because when you're sick, it takes your body a little bit to bounce back. And, for them who have to go out and play physical, I can't even imagine how much harder that is for them. So it's going to be interesting.
When you play your best football. And so
December football's here.
That's why the guys got to stay focused. They've got to show up, like I said, on paper. We've seen the lines continuously move in the Cowboys' direction ahead of this game this week. So we'll see how they step up. We enjoyed talking about the tight ends yesterday and some of the nicknames that they had. Haley, I know you've got this awesome sit down with Peyton Hendershot that we want to get into, but I also want to talk about just defensively. The Colts, while we talk about their offense is pretty rough, their passing defense is 5th in the league. So how we see the Cowboys tight ends, because we've seen them throw out 4 tight ends on the field. I think their 4 tight end sets has resulted in 3 touchdowns this season. How that matches up with what the Colts are going to field on the defensive side of the ball. We'll have that, plus a discussion about Jeff Saturday is doing a lot of delegating as the interim coach. Did Mike do any of that when he came to Dallas? We'll kick that idea around here in a little bit. This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We'll be right back after this break.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. Now, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
Welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. But first, Jess.
Experience the most electrifying event of the holiday season, Cowboys Christmas Extravaganza, powered by Reliant. Every Friday and Saturday night through December 17th, Cowboys Christmas Extravaganza ignites the Star in Frisco with an unforgettable holiday performance showcasing the world-renowned Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, your favorite Dallas Cowboys football heroes, and, of course, Santa Claus will visit too. Head to thestardistrict.com/Christmas for more information on that.
All right, let's talk about the Cowboys tight ends. As I referenced ahead of the break, there was a period in Dallas where Jason Witten was your lone tight end here. And the building, and talking to a couple of my sources, when Jason Witten decided to come out of retirement and come back, had the building split a little bit because they liked the development of Blake Jarwin and they liked the development of Dalton Schultz. And I can't name too many other tight ends other than maybe Gavin Escobar that really stand out to me in recent years. Jeff Swaim's another one, good name. But these guys have become so memorable so quick, and some of that has to do with their personality. But I think the other aspect of it is their production. Again, what was the little note that I had written out here? Yeah. They've done, when we talk about their tight end play, each has played in 23% of their snaps against the Giants. They had 4 tight ends in 7 plays this season, and that resulted in 3 touchdowns, thanks to Ed Werder over at ESPN. I saw that fun little note. So these guys are not only memorable for their personalities, but for their performance this year. And Peyton Hendershot has really stood out to you, thanks to a sit-down you got to do. And I want to plug that. You said that drops when?
The full interview drops on Saturday. I did put a fun little nugget up today. Peyton told me a story about his draft journey was nuts. He thought he was going to get drafted. They drafted his boy Jake instead. So when they actually came here, like, Peyton couldn't stand Jake, which I just think is so funny because now they're inseparable. But he talked about how he pretty much negotiated a deal with the Chiefs. So he was going to play with Patrick Mahomes. Lunda Wells gave him a call and said, come be my guy. Like, I will coach you. And so the deal was done. He told Andy Reid, never mind.
Can you imagine, but real quick, can you imagine
no.
saying, I don't want to go play with a guy like Patrick Mahomes.
Or Travis Kelce.
Everyone great. That's what I say. And then a guy like Travis Kelce. I mean, both of these guys are future Hall of Famers. And you're saying, I would rather go to Dallas, who hasn't won anything since 1995. And it already feels like it's a full tight end room.
It was just interesting, too, because you can tell he's coming from just such a place of humility. He talked about growing up, coming where he came from, to be in this position. There were so many moments in the interview where he just kind of stopped and was like, I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. And so when you put together what he's been able to do, because he's not your highest producing tight end from a statistical standpoint, but he does. We talked about it yesterday. He draws a lot away. He's fast. He can be a deep threat if you need him to be. He can run the ball in like he did on Thursday. But it was just so intricate and so detailed the way he is just so passionate about being a tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. And to your point, Jane, like you said, we haven't really seen that in a while. Jason Witten is the only one that comes to mind when I think about that true, I'm a Dallas Cowboys tight end through and through. And so I love that about our conversation. Like I said, I love the Chiefs comment. But
where did he come from when you talk about his background? Did he get into that at all with you?
As far as like growing up?
Yeah.
No, he mentioned a little bit about, like growing up was tough. So I didn't want to dig too much in that specific interview just because those are meant to be a little bit more lighthearted. But I know he comes from Indiana. He's mentioned to me before in the locker room too, like, just growing up was a little bit tough for him. So I don't know the type of background or what he grew up in from a family standpoint. I know family is very important to him. But that just kind of goes playing into that chip on his shoulder that he has. He talked about how when the draft process was playing out and he didn't get that call, my favorite soundbite he said of the whole day, he said, this is something that I've been looking forward to for my whole life. It was the one thing that I had circled where I said, I'm going to do this, and I thought I was going to go out and do it. So to not hear my name called on draft night, it broke him. And you don't hear that a lot from these guys. And I resonate with that because I was a walk-on in college, so that hits close to home because you want to play a little harder, you have a little bit more to prove. But when he came here, he was like, I didn't talk to anybody. I put my head down and I just went to work. I didn't want to be friends with anybody because this is what I had to prove. And so just knowing that now, knowing that, 6-7 months ago, whenever he was coming into rookie mini camp and OTAs and all of that was his mentality. And then seeing how far he has now developed to being the guy he is. And what I loved about the way he spoke was everything that he said when it came to his production or his role in that room is to help the others be successful. He talked about how if he would have been drafted instead of Jake wouldn't be in Dallas. And he was like, everything happened for a reason. And, so that's just how it played out. He talked about how, when I go out on the field, my role is to, stop the defense as much as possible so the other guys can be successful. And I finished editing it today. I wish it could drop today, but they always drop on Sundays 1st and 10. But yeah, it was, honest to God, one of my absolute favorite interviews I've done. And his energy, like, he's just so personable. So I'm really excited for the full thing to drop.
We're excited.
I just love fans when I love pieces like that because there are just certain guys that we constantly go to, particularly at the NFL Network. When we do a post-game interview, I had actually said I want to grab Jake Ferguson or Peyton Hendershot, but most of your national audience doesn't really care. Of course, we had Ezekiel Elliott instead, who gave me some great stuff. But I find myself, it reminds me of Deion Sanders used to be on NFL Network, and it was if you ball, you get the call.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, I
Deion's like
remember
post-game
that.
show. And I was covering the Saints, and Michael Thomas had this like breakout game. He lost his shoe in the game, and there was like this great story about the reason why he lost his shoe was they always get his shoe size wrong. And so he typically plays with a shoe that doesn't always fit. And I had said to Deion, do you want Michael Thomas? And he was like, nah. And I was like, I went up to Michael Thomas. I was like, you balled, you get my call. And so it's like, and then you see Michael Thomas,
Yeah.
obviously end up with his ridiculous, now he hasn't done much in the last 2 years with the Saints, but I always love when you get those guys early on and people don't know them yet, sharing their stories. And Michael Thomas was obviously a lot higher in the draft coming out of Ohio State, but I love the little unsung hero guys like Peyton and Jake.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up Jake, too. When I walked over to, because we always bring him over here to our studio, so when I went over to get Peyton, this is how much like in tune him and Jake are. Jake assumed that he was coming with us. He's like, oh, like, do I need to get dressed too? And I was like, no, Jake, not everything is about you. Like today we're going to let Peyton shine a little bit. So it's really fun to just see how they play off of one another. And I know we're going to kind of get into how this tight end room, goes against the Colts defense, but kind of to what I was talking about earlier in the week, they all have such a specific role within that room, and the way that they have just bought into that being what they do best, I think is the most impressive part, especially given that, 3 of the 4 are pretty new to the NFL. So to be able to step in, to make big plays, to just be just goofy, funny, I mean, they are truly a joy on the field, off the field, wherever it is. I would love to just hang out with them for outside of this building.
And credit to what Coach Wells has done with that many
about
guys.
to
You know what I was
say,
saying? Like what he's been able to create in that group. And I don't think I've ever seen players like Dak or Zeke light up about tight ends like that, because Dalton is very different personality-wise. I mean, granted, he's a little bit older, but I remember even Dalton being like the number 2 guy when Blake was the guy before he got injured. But I do think that this is creating a situation for the Cowboys, particularly that's all tight end when we talk about finding money for OBJ. You've got Trayvon Diggs coming up. You have to renegotiate Dak's contract at some point. I don't know where Dalton fits into the puzzle here. And I could see him very easily going somewhere else looking for a tight end because they're going to be able to pay him, whereas the Cowboys are going to say, we've got an embarrassment of riches in that room right now. Why are we going to do a long-term deal? And I know Stephen Jones talked about they had tried in good faith to get it done. I just wonder if Dalton Schultz now kind of wishes maybe he did. But if he's not going to get paid here, Dalton's going to get paid somewhere else. I mean, he had the 2 back-to-back touchdowns in this game for the Cowboys against the Giants.
Yeah, and even you talked about the tight end room, Sean McEwen.
Yeah.
He's actually been around for some of the up and down, and you can just see how comfortable he is, and him just being able to come in and play his role in blocking and being out there and
They
doing
all
his
just
job.
do their job.
Yeah, and to go into this week, they're probably going to have to do some chipping. They're probably going to have to come help out because this defensive line for the Colts has some guys on it. Like, they're going to have to do more, obviously, in the passing game, but they're going to probably have to help out with this D-line as well.
And I think something that's really exciting about this tight end group specifically is the toolbox it gives Kellen Moore. And he loves to use the term toolbox. And that's because, well, over here you have Jake, who's just physical. He's a physical player. You have Peyton, who's fast. And so you have these tight ends that can act really as pass pro protection, blockers, and really essentially wide receivers if you need them to, because they have this toolbox full of these young tight ends that can confuse and wear down defenses. Because same thing, like we talked about a couple weeks ago with Tony Pollard really stepping up as he has. You don't know what you're getting when Tony Pollard's on the field. But same thing with this tight end group. You don't know what you're getting. You don't know if Jake is going to sit there and block you out, or if he's going to run down the field and he's going to
hurdle you.
Hurdle you. I mean, you don't know. And I think
you out.
What was it? Zeke telling me yesterday how in the Giants game, one had hurdled the defender, and they literally said to Jake, or was it Henny?
Stay in bounds. It was Jake. It was Jake.
Stay in bounds. Don't try to hurdle. And what did he do? he went and tried to hurdle.
And they pushed him out of bounds, and they was all mad.
And
like-
anytime you can confuse an opposing defense like that, do it. Play those mind games and play them up, because this is a great and young tight end room. That's the best part of it. They're young. They established this kind of brotherhood off and on the field. Now, imagine years down the road if the Cowboys are able to keep all of them. That's another conversation for a different day.
So how do we see them matching up defensively against the Colts? How would you utilize them in this one?
They're going to have – so the Colts linebackers are pretty fast. I think the strength of their team right now for sure is that secondary. Because
Because that's it.
I mean, Stephon Gilmore has not given up a TD. You got Kenny Moore II that is not expected to play from what I've seen. He's dealing with a leg injury. But Rodney McLeod's back there, and he's no joke as well. Like, they got some guys that can really shut down what you want to do against the pass. But as far as, and then their defensive line can get after it as well. So I would definitely be trying to attack some of the shallow stuff, some of the, just quick hitter stuff, boots, waggles, kind of get your guys out on the run and get them moving, because this linebacker core is really good coming forward, and they're fast. They're good against the run, but you can catch them in coverage a couple of times. So I think that the tight ends will have opportunities here this week.
I'm having a bit of a brain freeze. Haley, did we go through the injury report when we came out of the break?
We did not. I was going to get to it at the very end since we did start with it, but I can do it right now.
Yeah,
if that's
why don't
what
we
you'd
get
like
into
to
the
do.
injury report? Because depending on if we're going to be missing one of the Cowboys wide receivers to an illness, it might tie into
Or
the
right tackle.
And that was exactly going to be my transition. So perfect. So injury report today for the Cowboys. Trayvon Diggs and Michael Gallup both out with an undisclosed illness.
Which,
McCarthy.
by the way, he refuses to say whether it's COVID.
I was just getting ready to say that. Yeah, like he didn't
Haley and I are always, like, on the
specify.
same wavelength.
Yeah, we didn't specify. He did say they've been doing some virtual stuff. So, I mean, at least they're still, that gives me hope, because, that means they're still at the very least participating. So we'll keep an eye on that. Anthony Barr was limited again, but we also got good feedback from Mike on him today. I think he said, where did I write that down? He looks good. He has a good chance. He had a nice day. So that's that. James Washington also had a nice day as well, too. Jaron Kearse was limited with his shoulder. I was joking with him in the locker room. I told him, my mom said he better play on Sunday. So Mama Sutton wants to see 27 on
Why
the
does
field.
Mama Sutton love 27?
She randomly asked about it. My mom is probably like the biggest football fan I've ever met, especially with the Cowboys. We're very big in my household. Before I started working here, they dictated our mood for the week, and that was very indicative of like my mom's personality.
That's my dad.
Yeah, she on Thanksgiving when Marcel, my boyfriend, was in town, he was at home watching the game with them, and he was texting me during the game, and he was like, "Your mom, like, she loves football," and I was like, "Yes, she does." So we'll see with Jaron Kearse. He's battling that shoulder injury. DeMarcus Lawrence limited with a foot injury. Terrence Steele popped up today. He did not practice for personal reasons. So just something to keep an eye out on as we go into Friday and this weekend. On the other side of the ball, or on the other side of, I guess on the other side of the ball, the Colts had some guys come back. So Ben Binoku was full participant today. I should have practiced his name. Kiki Kute.
QT. It's QT.
QT. Perfect. QT. He was full go today. Who did not practice? Kenny Moore did not practice today, so that's something to be mindful of. You were just talking about the secondary. They had a tackle who did not practice, Braden Smith, and Jelani Woods did not practice for the second straight day.
That's big.
We had a lot of talk about Jelani yesterday.
And he's actually, if I'm not mistaken, there. What did you say? Braden
Smith.
Oh, Kalen Granson is their starting tight end. And
Kylan. I missed him.
Kylan, rather.
Injury.
It seems like I went and did some digging, read a couple articles. Looks like he's on the uptick to come back.
He was full today.
Especially with Jelani not playing. But it's kind of a big deal because last game you could tell that when Matt Ryan was in a bind, he was going to Jelani because he's such a big guy. He's such a big target. He's easy to see. His catch radius is kind of crazy too. So I honestly feel like the Jelani loss is kind of big for a guy that's kind of scrambling and just trying to see the free guy sometimes when he's trying to fire the ball.
And this is tough because he's listed with a shoulder and a quad.
Tracking.
So I'm not sure which one is more limiting when it comes to him. I would probably assume the quad just because quad muscles are always so difficult to come back from. But yeah, definitely something to pay attention to for tomorrow when they send this out.
I don't typically like to ask people about their personal lives unless they volunteer it. But Haley, when we were in the press box this weekend, I had a little fun, and I actually was wondering it because I was going to ask you about it. You had said your boyfriend Marcel was in town.
Yes.
You were obviously at the stadium, busy working, and he got sort of a baptism by fire, hanging out with your family on the couch watching the game. How
Yes,
did that
he
go?
did.
Did mom and dad like him?
Oh, mom and dad love him. I hope he's listening. He never does when I brag about him. But full disclosure, I came from a horrible relationship. So anything Marcel does, I'm like, he is so good. You know what I mean? But he is a people person. He works for ESPN. For those of you who don't know, he's the Dolphins reporter for ESPN.
Power couple.
Yeah, and he is so good with people. And so he had met my mom before. He actually won her over. He took us to Disney World this summer with my niece. So we went to Disney World, and so she was sold on
Disney
that.
passes you get
Exactly, yeah.
Just so y'all know, he didn't foot the bill on that. But at Disney, when you work for ESPN, they float you every season you get 4 passes, spring and fall.
Yeah, so he had my mom sold from there, but he really won the respect of my dad because he helped me move from Miami to Dallas when I was taking this
when
job.
they don't have to do all the work.
Yeah, and I mean, he planned the whole thing. I remember it was probably my third to last night when I was in Miami. We were out at our favorite bar, and he randomly was like, let's chart this trip. So he whips out his phone. We're sitting at the bar, and he whips out his phone, and he's like, okay, if we leave here and we get to this city, that would give us this many hours. And so we charted our trip back at the bar. We get home, and so my dad loved him, but
that's a real one.
Yeah, he's such a people person. He's really, well, he's not a people person. I shouldn't be saying that. But he is good with people. But yeah, it was fine. They were all in a food coma. I do have the text confirming that he loved the food and that he, quote, we'll be back next year.
Okay.
So
There you
go.
That's good.
always
He's
positive.
future planning.
How many Thanksgivings do you make it? People be like,
Yeah,
you made it all the way to another Thanksgiving?
I don't think I've ever had one at 42 years old. I don't think I've had one guy, and that's including my ex-husband.
Make it?
Make it to the next Thanksgiving.
I think he's the only one. So, I mean, like I said, he's really good. He's really supportive. He helps me out a lot with this job, too, because he's been working in the NFL. He started, he was covering the Panthers for a little bit and then went to the Bills. That was his first ESPN job, and now he's down in Miami. So he's got a lot of experience. Sometimes he'll text me stuff during the game where he's like, the Dallas defense has had 6 pressures so far, 4 of which were they brought 4. And I'm like, okay, copy and paste tweet. So so he's been really helpful and he's awesome. So if you guys with the Dolphins too, go follow him on Twitter.
I love that. I love that it's working for you. My ex-husband was a sports reporter too, which is why I switched to news. There couldn't be 2 sports personalities in the household. He's now out of the business, and I continued
Still
on.
do your
I went back to sports. But
Well, he's good too
kudos
because
to you for figuring it out.
yeah, he writes mostly. He does do some TV stuff. I think it was the day whenever he was on
was
the TV
back
behind
here.
me, and so that's fun. So he usually writes though, so it's actually nice because we're yin and yang to where I help him with the TV stuff, and then he helps me with the football stuff. So it's really good balance.
That's
love
awesome.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
you have been such a value add around here. I've told you this multiple times. And I think sometimes, and this isn't all men, but I think that they think that we've got guys in our ears telling us how to do our job. I love that Marcel's not doing that, but he is helping you get better at your job because there are nuances to this. I'm still learning. I constantly go to coworkers. I've got questions. Like I said, even this week I'm asking dumb questions to Dak and Zeke. Well, why aren't you doing silent counts?
It's a great question, though.
I love that.
It was so
Zeke
good.
was like, well, I think you were reinventing football.
And then
he thought about it
But then he was like, but I see your logic.
And then in the locker room, too, when he went up to you, he was like, no, wait, that was actually a really good point. He was sitting on it for a while.
I love just Zeke and Dak, period, this year, just feel more relaxed with themselves and with those in the media. Not like they haven't, but I feel like they've really sort of grown into their own this year, having been with them since their rookie year. So I love to see it for both guys. But I love, like I said, we get these opportunities. I'm going to ask you about your family because I know they're huge Cowboy fans.
Yep.
And I also love about your military background and the fact that you were a quasi-mom for a little bit.
Yeah.
Love your heart.
That's
So
fair.
I want people to also get to know you guys on a personal level because, as I noticed with radio, when they're listening to you every day, they come to you for the information, but then they also feel like they start to get to know you.
Yeah.
And so they stay bought in when they feel like we open up a little bit. So thank you for sharing. I know.
And these girls know too. Like anytime I get a chance to talk about him,
We always tell her too when she takes pictures with him. She has this like beautiful glowy smile. It is the cutest thing. She goes, "I know it's cheesy.
I know,
like no, own it. It is so
Marcel,
cute.
don't mess up. No, big sis will come for you." All right, we're gonna take our second and final break. But when we come back, we are gonna have a pass interference for you. And I also am going to pivot for you girls. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the Colts defense, but I think we got into it in that break. Let's talk a little bit about Jeff Saturday and this whole delegation thing that he's doing since becoming the interim head coach for the Colts, and whether Mike has done that at this point in his career or not since coming to the Cowboys. We'll have that and more on the other side of the break.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. Now, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
With Smoothie King's original Angel Food and new Angel Food Slim without added sugar, you no longer have to choose between treating yourself and hitting your goals this summer. You don't have to choose between great taste and feeling great. Because at Smoothie King, every blend is made with whole fruits and no syrups, so you can satisfy your cravings without compromise. The only choice you will need to make is which one is best for you. Try our classic Angel Food or the new Angel Food Slim, blended without added sugar. Smoothie King, rule the day.
Welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, brought to you by Jigsaw Dating, the official dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Jess, we got some live reads.
Well, give the gift of Cowboys this holiday season with Dallas Cowboys United a membership. Gift your superfan the annual fan club membership and a fan pack for as little as $20 because 'tis the season. Learn more at dallascowboys.com/united. Sounds like the perfect gift for my dad. Sounds like he's target audience for that.
I love that.
I wasn't expecting my dad at the end. I'm sorry.
Do it for the dads. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Jeff Saturday. For those that aren't familiar, he's taken over as the interim coach, former offensive lineman for the Colts. Great relationship with Jim Irsay. Chris Ballard, the GM, thought he obviously could do the job. It hasn't worked out so great for him yet. Young OC talking about doing a lot of delegating. You know, he knows how to lead men. It's interesting. We'll see if it works. In Dallas, Haley, you asked the question to Mike McCarthy about that today, and we'll get to your response in a little bit. But I find it a little perplexing because I have talked to Mike McCarthy about delegating. And particularly this offseason, the members of the media at the Combine all got to sort of meet with Mike. And I asked him point blank because it's sometimes, particularly in the 49ers game in the playoff loss, why haven't you just taken over the playbook? Yeah. That's what you were known for. That's what you did in Green Bay. And he said that he had learned at a certain point in his career that he can't do everything and that he has to delegate a little bit. So his response to you today was interesting to me.
Yeah, it was just a little frustrating because it wasn't leading. Like, I knew it would be a tricky question. That's probably why it hadn't been asked yet. So I wanted to make sure I framed it in a way that wasn't comparing him or his accomplishments to what Jeff Saturday has done. I point blank asked him, like, do you see or feel any parallels between his delegation versus what you chose to do when you started here? And he was not having that. He was very much, I think he even said, I don't think you can even compare the two situations. And that was that. So I get it because I'm sure in his mind, he took it as though it was an attack on his accomplishments and what he's done in the past. But I mean, it definitely was a little bit of a, like, okay, my bad. Like,
Yeah.
Sorry.
I thought that you were just asking how it is when you first are a coach. Like, you're a new head
just
coach.
the adjustment
when you
and
initially come in.
Well, and Jeff Saturday talked about that in his press conference earlier too, about the hardest part so far is the distractions, and by distractions he means the extra meetings, meeting with media, and doing everything while still trying to get your feet on the ground. So he did talk about that, and I feel like if anybody could relate to those distractions and how hard it is to really just adjust to any kind of coaching job, it was Mike McCarthy.
I certainly felt like his first year there was only so much bandwidth that even Mike had with COVID, the technology. I felt like some of the problems with the defense were he didn't spend as much time over there on that side of the ball. He was letting Mike Nolan and those guys do their thing, and that's why things sort of fell apart. And now you've got Dan Quinn that fully has a handle on that defense. He doesn't really have to do much over there. But yeah, I think that there's an element to all of that. Even with my job at NFL Network, I can only do so much. And I didn't have a producer for my first 4 years here in Dallas, and most reporters do, just because there's so much. There's not transcripts. There's tons of audio. We're on air a lot of times when it's like open practice, and particularly on game days. It took me a while to sort of trust Bobby Belt, who was just on Media Mash with me, to be able to do some things where it was, because you're so used to doing things
all by yourself.
That MMJ life, girl.
Right, but it's also like the only person that's going to get it right is myself. The only person I trust is myself. So yeah, sort of interesting discussion. I probably should have given us more time and more nuance to get into it, but thought that was sort of fascinating. Before we wrap the show, we got a pass interference from you, Jess.
All right, the Cowboys are 10-6 against the Colts, where they have racked up a total of 45 touchdowns and 5,527 offensive yards. On average, though, they score nearly 3 touchdowns a game against the Colts. They'll average a little more than 20 first downs, and then a little over 245 offensive yards per game. But in case you're wondering, the Cowboys defense has allowed, on average, 311 yards for the Colts offense per game. There you go.
All right, well, starting next week, we're going to do a fun news segment because, again, as we have sort of gotten our sea legs under us, new staff here, new coach on this show for the podcast this season, I feel like we're beginning to hit our stride a little bit. But we'd also like to start engaging a little bit more with the fans. I think all of us get your questions on Twitter or on Instagram, but I always love taking calls. So we're going to start doing that on Thursdays next week. The number will be 1-888-855-2297. I sound like a telemarketer.
Yeah, you do.
1-888-855-2297. So we'll start taking your calls next Thursday. We will, of course, be screening you, so don't be idiots when you call in. But it'll give us an opportunity to sort of interact with you guys and answer any questions that you have ahead of the game. So keep that in mind, and then we'll, of course, remind you of that next week. Thanks for tuning in. Let's hope that we're talking Victory Monday as they face the Colts this weekend. Until then, enjoy your weekends.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!